Let's start with the hardware on the Mi A1. Dual 12MP sensors, one wide angle with f2.2 aperture, as well as a telephoto lens with f2.6 aperture that offers 2x optical zoom. The telephoto camera has 1 micron pixel size, while the wide angle one has 1.25 micron pixel size, just like the primary 12MP camera with f2.2 aperture on the Redmi Note 5 Pro. The Redmi Note 5 Pro also has a secondary sensor, but it's only a 5MP depth sensor with f2 aperture and 1.12 micron pixel size. The overall image quality is better on the Note 5 Pro with a better dynamic range and slightly better sharpness and detailing in good lighting conditions. The images look a bit flatter on the 5 Pro and don't have as much as contrast as the Mi A1 though. The Mi A1 has an issue with white balance where images created are quite yellowish mostly and is visible especially in vegetation. The Note 5 Pro HDR has a tendency to create an image as slightly underexposed overall, but Xiaomi should be able to fix it easily with an update. Under low light, the Mi A1 does worse when it comes to noise in the images and also has inaccurate colors at times. Both the phones do better in HDR mode than the default HSD mode, and you should use HDR or manual mode whenever you can. HDR mode gives slightly longer shutter speeds but are manageable even when handheld. The underexposing nature of the 5 Pro HDR mode continues in low light as well. Coming to a portrait mode is a bit difficult to get the framing exactly spot on due to a huge difference in the focal length. However, we have tried to minimize the differences. The Mi A1 at the time had a portrait mode that was pretty incredible, and as we did compare, was better than the OnePlus 5. When we compare the Mi A1 to the Note 5 Pro, however, it does seem to pale in comparison, especially in terms of the blurring algorithm as well as the sharpness, which were funnily the true strong points that gave it an advantage over the OnePlus 5. The Mi A1 produces a more natural lens blur as well as a forced perspective due to its narrow field of view, which does have its own effect. But apart from that, the sharpness, blurring algorithm and edge detection aren't as good as the Note 5 Pro, and this is evident when you pixel peep. Another major difference is the dynamic range. Since the Note 5 Pro uses a main sensor, the dynamic range is superior as can be seen in these photos even during portrait mode. Yes, the overall exposure is a bit on the darker side, but it's actually easier to increase the exposure or bump up the shadows than it is to recover information from the highlights, especially when it's so blown out. We edited a few images by bumping up the exposure and fiddling with the shadows for the Note 5 Pro and bringing down the highlights for the A1, and here are the results. The end results show a more usable and visually appealing image on the Note 5 Pro, while you'll see some weird artifacts in certain portions on the A1 due to lack of information. We also did a poll this time around again to see which one was liked the most and what the ratio was. The Redmi Note 5 Pro won the poll, so it's surely doing something right. Sure, the portrait mode aside, the telephoto lens gives you that extra reach that the depth sensor on the 5 Pro can't really provide, and for that the A1 deserves a special mention. If you're stuck in a situation where you need to get closer to something without physically moving further, then the A1 will come in handy. The panorama shot on the Mi A1 funnily enough are better and don't exhibit the yellowish white balance issue, but the 5 Pro does it here. The 5 Pro also made worse panoramas than the Note 5 when we compared it, so it definitely needs some tweaking. The front camera on both the phones are vastly different. As we mentioned in the overall comparison, the 5MP camera on the A1 doesn't stand a chance against the 20MP f2.2 1 micron camera. Not because of the pixel count, but because of how the images are rendered. There's just a whole lot more detail, dynamic range and clarity to the photos. You also get the option for HDR and even a portrait mode, both of which the A1 lacks. Video recording always has been and still is the Achilles heel of the Mi A1. These two videos will show you the difference between two phones when it comes to a video. The primary difference can be seen in terms of stabilization, but apart from that too, you will notice better detailing, dynamic range and overall processing on the 5 Pro when compared to the A1. The videos don't look as impressive on the 5 Pro without EIS enabled, but it's there and you can take advantage of it. Currently the Mi A1 has the advantage of being able to record 4K video, which will come to the 5 Pro pretty soon with an OTA. If they manage to give 4K with EIS, then it'll be a great thing. We also went ahead and shot some footage handheld on a bike in Bangalore with both the A1 and 5 Pro to see just how much EIS helps in video recording. Here are the results. So this is a front-facing camera of the Redmi Note 5 Pro capturing 1080p video. Let me know what you guys think about the overall quality, the sharpness, the dynamic range. as well as how well it's capturing my voice. So this is with the EIS turned on. Now on the Note 5 Pro, the EIS on the front camera is not all that great. It's actually pretty much like not having it on. The EIS on the rear camera is amazing, but the front camera is kind of average. So we'll leave it on and we'll just compare it to the Mi A1, but we'll also have a separate clip with the EIS turned off just so you guys know how different the stabilization is. So now I've just disabled the stabilization on the front facing camera. Let me know if there's any drastic change in terms of the overall stabilization or whether it remains more or less the same. But the main comparison here is with the Mi A1 itself in terms of the overall image quality, the sharpness, dynamic range, and how well it's able to capture my voice and the overall stabilization. This is a front-facing camera on the Mi A1 capturing 1080p video. There's no stabilization on this, but I just want you guys to let me know how you find the overall sharpness, the dynamic range, the stabilization, the contrast level, saturation, etc. compared to the Redmi Note 5 Pro. The Mi A1 was a tough phone to beat, especially in the price segment when it came to the rear cameras. But since then, brands such as Honor have been acing the photography game and providing smartphones that could rival it and maybe even perform better. Luckily for Xiaomi, the Redmi Note 5 Pro manages to beat them at their own game and even perform exceptionally well on the videography front. It's even more surprising considering that the camera hasn't reached its full potential and software updates are going to tap into that. With the A1 out of the equation under 20k, if you want an all-round camera, then the Note 5 Pro is the best out there. Thanks for watching this video. See you again in the next one.